I am unashamed. What about you?
Welcome back to Unashamed. I always like when we have a live studio audience. We've got a couple here from Pennsylvania. And the one thing I love
I
about
thought it was Ohio.
Pennsylvania?
Oh, Pennsylvania. Ohio. That's close.
They're in the neighborhood. Jase is always just a little off. But anyway, they Unashamed Nation, when folks come through here, I love it because I get a message from whom I call my fat counselor lovingly. It doesn't mean she's fat. It means that I was fat. And so she helped me to not be. And her name is Heather. And so she's also these folks' counselor. And so through our counselor, we connected for them coming through. But they're coming through because Laura killed her first white-tailed deer in Texas. So they were going to, it's her birthday this week, and so they were coming through to kill a deer. And I was like, only in Unashamed Nation do we have husbands taking their wives thousands of miles away to kill things. So I like that. I think that's pretty good confirmation that our audience gets us.
Well, once you eat one, you see why that catches on.
Exactly. And so they also brought a bag full of Pennsylvania products that neither they can eat nor I can eat, but they're being eaten by people in my family. So I just want to say thanks for them being here. And someone asked the question today, what is PhD? Because, it's been the diet we've been on. So I texted Dr. Ashley because I've never asked that question. I've been on this thing a year, and I've never said, why did you call it PhD? I assumed it was because she has a PhD. But she said it stands for Performance, Health, and Diet.
Oh.
PhD. A play on words, she said.
I thought you were getting a PhD in weight loss, but...
Well, that's what I thought. That's why I call her Dr. Frankenstein, Doctor. So the couple that's here, they lost a sack of corn, about 50 to 55 pounds.
Yeah.
I lost a chunky middle schooler, 75 pounds. Zach, how much did you lose?
Probably about 38.
38? So I don't know. What is 38 pounds?
That means he's not sure.
Yeah, 38.
Well, let me give you a real life, forget all this. If you went and did what I did yesterday, I probably lost 5 pounds. I'm just guessing because I'm not keeping up with it. But I busted a beaver dam.
Because that's the old school.
Louisiana is the land of extremes. And about 3 days ago, it was 20 degrees.
Yeah.
Yesterday, it was 70.
And today it's back to, it was 37 when I woke up this morning.
Oh, I know. In 24 hours, it went from 20 to 70, then another 24 hours back to 38, and now it's about 55.
Is it any wonder we're coughing and hacking in here?
I actually battled mosquitoes, ants. I was bitten everywhere. And, of course, I'm battling these beavers because now Phil's with the Lord, so... And I'm sure if he's aware of what's happening, he's doing his little laugh because these beavers, you're talking about the evidence of God.
Yeah.
I mean, we busted this dam to get water in the first split. We're in the split of duck season, which it opens back up tomorrow. So this is the second duck season eve that I find myself with y'all.
Are you as excited as you were on the first one?
Well, I'm not as excited because I went down there yesterday to scout. There's no ducks and very little water, which is so unusual for Louisiana. It will not substantially rain. So I'm having to break a dam for a little lake that my dad made to get some water. But we had busted that in the first split. So in 10 days...
Built it back.
No, they didn't just build it back. They built a 4-foot wall that at some point, because every time I'm moving, I'm in pain. So if I'm grimacing, that's the reason. I almost could not break the dam. I mean, I was just...
You almost gave up.
Almost gave up. I just could not believe that these little
Dad used
varmints.
to always say that if the Corps of Engineers wanted to learn how to build things, watch the beaver.
They put they go cut poles, put those down first. Then they start adding mud. Then they take smaller branches with anything with leaves on it, put that in there.
So
then
that
add
packs
mud.
it in.
Oh, it becomes an infrastructure like we do with wire and concrete.
Right.
and give it a couple of days, and it becomes a wall. I mean, it looks like it's just land with a bunch of sticks on top. It's kind of like they make it pretty at the end in their eyes. So I got it, and so I told Jay this morning he was going deer hunting down there. I said, first thing you do is go down there and see if they built that back. And he, what do you call it when you can talk to someone and see?
FaceTime?
Yeah, we did the FaceTime thing, which was weird because we were talking.
What's funny is that I knew what he was talking about.
And then all of a sudden I said, well, how are you calling me while we're talking? He's like, just click the button. So well, then I could see him. I was like, oh, well, he looked rough this morning. I don't know what he did yesterday.
I know.
He's up
down there. He's down there rolling around with these young people at that jiu-jitsu mat. He comes in. He's like you today. Yeah. He's barely moving. He's like, yeah, you need to come try jiu-jitsu. I was like, you're not presenting a poster that I want to be a part of. Yeah. I'll tell you right now.
He showed me the video as I'm talking to him, and the wall was back. I mean, I did that yesterday at about 3 o'clock. Overnight. It looked like I had never been there. You could see all the debris on both sides that I tore down. It was all back. And they didn't use the debris because I was like, did they use the stuff that? He's like, nope, all new stuff. It's got to be an army. There's got to be 100 of them.
Well, Dad said they have meetings and they have large corporate gatherings, and he had a whole like. But now you understand why it kind of drove Dad a little bit mad trying to fight the beaver.
It actually just made me realize, it's the evidence of God. What? That came from nothing?
The original engineer.
Nothing is something.
Yeah.
Because that couldn't have happened. I mean, they're master engineers. So he said, he was taking off his outer jacket, and I was like, well, let me let you get to that, which it won't be as hard as what I did yesterday. But actually, the water had raised substantially just me doing that in probably 2 hours it took me.
Yeah.
Then I walked about 3 miles scouting and had a lot of close encounters with deer in the duck hole. So all we got's deer. But that's how you get in shape was my point.
Oh, yeah. Back to the PhD. So, Zach, I got several texts as well as our couple that's here today because Maddie had dropped the Lisa Harper episode we did a couple of months ago because kind of out of sequence because we filmed those in Nashville. I don't know if y'all remember that. She told the story about her daughter. And it was fantastic because I've gotten probably 6 texts from people that listen to the podcast that were like, have this woman on more.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Yeah, they were like.
She needs to come back.
So my son Max is wanting to get married. He's engaged, and he asked me just yesterday about buying a house. And you know what I told him? I said, if you're going to buy a house, you got to call my friends Andrew and Todd. You got to call my friends Andrew and Todd because if buying a house is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. For the first time in years, buyers finally have the upper hand, which means there's more inventory, which means that you have more negotiating power and less competition. But this will not last long. As soon as the Feds cut the rates, what happens is buyer demand, boop, it pops up. And you know what that means? Prices go up with it, and sellers then have the advantage. So reach out today. I told Max this. Reach out today and get approved for mortgage financing with Andrew and Todd at andrewandtodd.com or call 888-888-1172. I know Andrew and Todd personally. Met these guys at a worship event. They're the real deal. They love Jesus. It's important to work with someone who shares those same values that you hold. These are the guys I trust with 40 years of experience. They really are the experts, and they make it easy because they keep everything in-house. So call 888-888-1172 or go to andrewandtodd.com. That's andrewandtodd.com.
So we got to get Lisa back on, and because she has her own
push some buttons and make some calls, and let's do that.
We'll make that happen.
Make that happen.
Well, what we have to make happen is because we're at the
end of the line
of John.
We have gotten to the caboose.
I know it's been a long process, but we wanted to give you some insight and try to give you the view from the beginning, since that's where John started.
So these are the last 2 episodes of 20 25. The ones we're doing today are going to release right before New Year's.
Well, we do have a couple bonus ones we're doing.
Yeah, we're doing a couple to start next year with a very special guest. So do we tell her, or do we just let that?
Can we tease that? Oh,
Okay.
they have their finger over their lips.
We have a guest coming in. That'll start our New
I'm
Year.
actually taking them duck hunting, so it should be interesting.
So it's going to be fun. So we need to tie off John 21. We need to get there today. We left off obviously with the last appearance to Thomas in John 20. I did want to mention because I don't think we talked about it. Maybe we just referenced it, but there were a couple of other appearances that are not mentioned by John, and one of those is in Luke 24, and that was the two disciples on the road to Emmaus.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which is a good one. And so I thought we'd at least need to mention it that happened. And because it was some other really cool Jesus Jedi tricks that he did.
I mean, it shows you the new body, which I guess in my study for what we were going to talk about today, I think we tend to think, God changes things back to the way they were. We use words like restoration and repentance, and you make this change. But you got to remember, he makes it, whatever he creates, whatever the new creation infers, it's better than it was before.
Yeah.
And I think this ties...
So you're right, restoration really is not a big enough word.
Yeah, I don't like that word.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
We use it. You're just... And I mean, there's biblical evidence of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just think about his body that he received back.
But you almost need to add a plus, like restoration plus. I mean, because it's...
Because he in Luke 24, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was thinking about this, the story of Jesus blows your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no matter how long you've been a believer, your mind continues to get blown, because you're thinking, okay, he becomes a human. God becomes a human. John 1:14. The Word becomes flesh. And he lives 33 years on the earth, roughly.
3 years public.
Then he comes back, and we made this on the last podcast, this analogy. His resurrected body was better than Lazarus's, which he conducted through the power of the Holy Spirit and the Word, which is a constant theme, in the first creation. He was just speaking, and it was happening.
Yeah.
It's like, let there be light. If I say let there be light, somebody needs to get over by a light switch. and then it goes to the power company. And we need some support. But
system. We got to have a system.
But I think people who are not believers, they have trouble with that. But he's a creator. And even I brought up that about the beavers. I mean, that just is.
Yeah.
We try to scientifically explain all that, but I'm like, somebody created a beaver with a mind of a engineer that's outstanding.
Yeah.
And just think, they don't have any tools besides claws and teeth.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And we joke about them having a meeting, but instinctively they just go do that. And they knew that you tore it out. Someone was watching. Someone knew and alerted the crew.
Well, just think,
tonight we're all on. We're not off.
Time to go back to work.
Time to go back to work.
Well,
how do they know that?
I jokingly told Jay, I said, you know what I thought about? I was like, if you went and got some of your buddies or the people who hang around, Duck Commander and the people we take duck hunting, and y'all were to go build that without any tools, just using your teeth and your hands, and no money being spent. You just go out there and take the environment. I said, I really believe the beavers will whip you.
They would.
And he said, what are you trying to say? I said, y'all need to step it up. Do something. It'd be a great episode.
You said something just a few minutes ago that is, I think it's a big point that we overlook a lot. And I've used that term restoration quite a bit. In fact, I had a company, used to have a company named that.
It was our company, Zach. You and I had it together.
That's right. You named a company. You should have checked with me, and I said, think bigger.
I have one called L.A. Restored, which is Lisa and Alan Restored. So
you know what you should have named it? better than restoration.
If I think about my journey as a Christian, my initial entry into Christ, I was obsessed with the justification part. That's all we talked about, right? So this is what I used to be. I got saved. I'm not guilty. And everything was about not being guilty, which is part of it. Then as I matured, I started to focus a whole lot more on my sanctification, which is kind of an idea of restoration, that I'm being restored back to, I would say this, I'm being restored back to my original position in creation, which was innocent. But now in my later years of the faith, I'm focusing a lot more on what's called consummation or glorification. And when you mentioned that, it is true. I was thinking, what is the difference between Eden and even the body that humanity had in Eden versus like the second coming, like the kingdom that's coming at the end and will be consummated? And one of I thought about this verse in Revelation 21, because that's the picture of the new heavens and the new earth. Revelation 21 verse 27 says something really, really interesting, and it does show us a big difference between Eden and the one that we're awaiting, which is the garden that we're waiting to live in forever. And it says, nothing unclean will ever enter it. So when you think about Eden was awesome. It was, in a way, kind of a form of utopia because everything was innocent and there was no sin and there was no fall. But the problem was that wasn't permanent, because sin actually did enter into Eden in the form of the serpent, and then Adam and Eve believed the serpent's lie, and then they ate the fruit and became sinners, and then Eden was destroyed, and then death entered the world. What's going to be different about what's going to be different about the kingdom, or the new heaven and the new earth, is that death itself will be destroyed. That it will be impossible. It will be impossible for evil or sin or anything unclean to enter into that new sanctuary, that new garden that we'll live in forever. So the difference is Eden was not consummated. It was innocent, yes, but it wasn't consummated. So when you think about your body, your physical bodies, the reason why Christ's physical body was different, he wasn't restored back to the same exact type of body that he had before his death, because the body that was sown perishable was raised imperishable. So whatever came out of the grave, it was a totally different type of body that transcended anything that happened before. So we're not returning back to the past. This is a progressive thing that's moving into something incredible. Yeah, when you really think about it, by 2050, you're going to have more than a third of the world's population, or at least young people, are going to live in the continent of Africa, while less than 4% are going to live here in the U.S. I mean, we're talking about entire nations that are going to be shaped by the children who are growing up today. But our friends at Tomorrow Clubs are stepping up to ensure that next generation in places like Zimbabwe, that they're discipled by the church and not the world. And we're helping them focus on one of their greatest opportunities ever. It's the Binga district, one of the most isolated and disadvantaged regions in Zimbabwe. Now, before Tomorrow Clubs arrived, Binga had virtually no children's ministry whatsoever. And now local churches are discipling thousands of kids each week. More than 40 more villages are asking for help. They want Tomorrow Club support, and we can help them reach 5,000 kids in these villages by the end of the year, and you can be a part of that. You can be a part of helping shape the church of tomorrow in this forgotten corner of the world. And this is a ministry that truly believes in long-term discipleship. So here's the deal. $100 trains a Tomorrow Clubs leader. $250 covers a one-time cost to equip a local church. And you know what? If God places it on your heart, you can actually sponsor an entire community for $2,000, which will launch and sustain the ministry in a new community for an entire year. But any amount will help, and every gift is matched for a limited time, so you can double your impact. Join the Binga Blitz at tomorrowclubs.org/unashamed. That's tomorrowclubs.org/unashamed.
So see, we do agree. And a couple points in there. That's also why Jesus defeated the powers that help contribute to bring sin into the world. That's why there's so much, especially in, think Colossians 2, where on the cross he disarmed the powers Hebrews 2, which we always mention, that he destroyed the power of the evil one who over death, who held people in slavery by their fear of death. So, I mean, that's just neglected in modern Christian teaching. The Bible is filled with that. The book of Ephesians, how many times does he say, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers and powers and authorities. You know, in Ephesians 3, he's like, the whole church's job is to speak this truth to the powers in the heavenly places. That's Ephesians 3. So I'm glad you brought that up. We're tracking. I'm currently, this is not a rabbit hole I want to go down, but I'm introducing a future rabbit hole coming to a podcast near you. Because, Zach, I did the same thing. Went back to the first creation, and mainly I got that idea about this idea of restoration being better than what we can wrap our head around. And I think this encounter that Jesus is going to have with Peter proves what I'm saying, because in his conversation, if you know, it's pretty much one of the worst sins you could do is to deny Jesus as the Christ and your affiliation with him, which he did 3 times, which I know we're going to get to this later. But I think we would respond as humans thinking, all right, here's what you do, Peter. Go through a 6-month course, you know. I mean, you have to be rehabilitated. We would start there. But Jesus he's asking him
We'd have him in a 12-step group.
Yeah, that's right. You have literally done the opposite of what I came here to do.
Yep.
And yet he immediately has this, we'll get into the details, this conversation of, do you love me?
Yeah.
But what does he tell him? Go feed my lambs. And he's go feed my sheep.
Back to the shepherding.
He's back to, I got a job for you to do.
Yep.
And it's the idea of you're going to be way better than you were before.
Yeah.
And you've been following me all along. And I think he did that with Thomas. He did that with Mary. Because she was, you know, they all had their struggles.
The 2 guys on the road to Emmaus, same thing. Because
same
remember,
thing.
he asked him. He said, "What are you doing? What are you talking about?" And he just kind of appears, and all of a sudden, he's a guy walking alongside him, and he's like, "What are you guys talking about?" They're like, "You hadn't heard? I mean, there's some stuff happening around here." And he said, "What things?" And then they tell him,
well, those 3 words when they say, "We had hoped that he was going to restore Israel." Bring the kingdom to Israel. But so their faces were downcast. And
then he said his thing in verse 25. He says, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And then it says he took from that statement, he went all the way through Moses, the prophets, and he reminded them all the things that were said about him.
Yeah.
And then they wind up, they're like, we want to hear some more. Will you come eat with us? And once again, he says yes to a meal, to your point, Jase.
Yeah.
Probably fish. And then they were talking, and they looked at him, and their eyes were opened, and they saw him, and they realized it was him. And guess what happened?
And you know what else? Their hearts burned.
Yeah, exactly.
And then their feet started moving. They started running. I did a sermon one time on the road to Emmaus or the hike to Jerusalem, because they were sad on the road to Emmaus. Oh, Jesus is dead. It's over. We thought he was going to do all this. But then they run at night.
Yeah.
After they
And you've been there. It's uphill to Jerusalem.
It's a good question. What road are you on? Are you walking, saying, "Boy, I tell you, it's over," or are you running?
Moping on the road to Emmaus? Are you running on the road to Jerusalem?
Hollering, "He's alive!"
I do. That's a great line, though. He said, "Their hearts did not our hearts burn in us while He opened the Scriptures to us." And I think that you read that Emmaus Road story, and you read the whole thing, even past that, when he ends up up in the room and he's addressing the disciples. There is a nugget of wisdom, not just wisdom. It's more than a nugget. It is a core anchor truth of how I think we get a picture of how we're supposed to read the Scriptures. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but Luke 24 is a very important passage that we should all study, because what it shows us is that we really should read the Bible through the lens of Jesus. And what that means is when you go back and read the Old Testament, I was preaching on Isaiah one time in our church, and this guy came up to me and said, "But your hermeneutic's off." And the word hermeneutic just means the way you interpret the scriptures, the way that the method that you use to interpret scripture is off. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You keep interpreting the prophet Isaiah, but you're doing it through the lens of the New Testament, and that's not a good hermeneutic." And I'm like, agree to disagree. I think your hermeneutic is off, because when you read what's happening here, how did Jesus convince these people that the Christ had to raise from the dead? Because think about what they're saying here. They thought, we thought this guy was going to be the hope for Israel. Well, he actually was the hope for Israel, but the problem is they didn't really understand who Israel was. They didn't have a proper eschatology. They didn't understand the whole thing. So what does Jesus do? He pulls out the Old Testament scriptures. He literally pulls out the Torah. He pulls out the prophet Isaiah. He pulls out the prophet Daniel. He pulls out the prophet Ezekiel. I don't know where he went, but he's in the Old Testament, because when it says he pulled out the scriptures, it's not talking about the New Testament, because the New Testament had not been written yet. So Jesus is making the case for Jesus with the Old Testament. He's showing them from the Old Testament why the Christ had to rise from the dead. Same thing with Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. What does he say? That Christ died, he was buried, and he was raised according to what? The scriptures.
The Hebrew
what scriptures?
Yeah.
These are Hebrew scriptures.
You remember, Zach, the first time he went to the synagogue in one of his early first appearances, Jesus in his ministry, remember he was reading from Isaiah, and guess who he read about? Himself.
Oh, he read about himself.
Who did he? What did he bring up when he was tempted by the evil one? Back to the powers. That's never mentioned in the temptation.
Right.
He's taking him on. Who's going to be the king here? And he starts quoting scriptures.
Yeah, every
from
time.
the Old Testament, which is what a while ago I teased my rabbit hole, and I never said what it was, but I made a connection with this idea about restoration being better, and Zach immediately went back to Genesis 1, and that was what I was going to tease, because the creation story itself, from a literary standpoint, having the 7 days and then God resting, well, that's the rabbit hole I went, because I realized, and due to poor translation by the NIV, sorry, I'm still using it, but I just... What I didn't realize is when it says in Genesis 2, where it says God put Adam in the garden to work it, that word put, it's a synonym for rest.
So, guys, there's a battle out there that too many good people are fighting all by themselves. And I'm talking about the struggle with pornography. But I want to encourage you and tell you that there is hope. We've partnered with our good friends at Covenant Eyes because we really believe in the tools that they have that bring accountability and victory into the light.
So, Zach, throughout my entire ministry, pornography has always been an issue. You see the sort of mind rot that comes about because of and it's all a lie. It's just this based on a lie. It's not real. It's not real relationship.
Well, and now, due to technology, it's so much easier to access.
In younger ages, too.
It has snowballed into an avalanche, and it has relationship consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on it. It's episode 1197. You guys need to check that out. And so they have something called Victory by Covenant Eyes. It's a game changer because it's the relationship first solution for overcoming porn and reclaiming your life. And it's designed to help you or your loved ones quit for good. Over 1.8 million people have found freedom through Covenant Eyes, and you can too. So for our listeners, we have a free 30-day trial for you if you visit covenanteyes.com/unashamed and use the promo code unashamed to get that free 30-day trial. Again, that's code unashamed for a special free trial on your first month. Let's walk in the light together. That's covenanteyes.com/unashamed and use the promo code unashamed.
So he rested him in the garden. And you say, well, wait a minute. If God's resting and man's resting, how come he rested him in there to actually work the garden? And then as I started this rabbit hole, I realized that Noah's name means rest. And when the ark rested on the land, all this, it keeps coming up. And so what I found was this symbolic language of the number 7. Just think how many times that's used
quite
in
a
the
bit.
Bible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm studying all this.
Yeah.
What I have found has been fascinating, but and that's coming to you at some point, because what's going to happen is it started changing my definitions of like work.
Yeah.
Like that. He put Adam, he rested him in the garden to work it. Well, it's not the kind of work that was going to happen post-sin, where then he's working to survive.
Yeah.
Because now death
Well,
is...
now he's fighting. It's like you and the beavers.
Yeah, right.
Well, because
And
work is not the curse. That, we got to remember,
Yeah,
work
work is not the curse. And
Yeah.
think of all the New Testament when it'll go through our experience of transformation. Think Ephesians 2, where he's like, you were under the work of the evil one.
Yeah.
You know, the first 3 verses. You're gratifying the sinful nature.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, God demonstrated his love. He poured his grace out on us and made us alive. We've talked about all this. But then it gets down to verse 10, so that we could work.
We are God's workmanship, created to do good work.
It's a different kind of work that's never been pursued.
Right.
But, I'm on it.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you get to Hebrews 3 and 4, which when y'all say Hebrews 3 and 4, your mind probably goes blank. But it goes back to the first creation and the 7 days where it said, and God rested. And now it's introducing Jesus as offering this new kind of rest.
Yeah.
Well, what rest is this that you speak? And that's just a teaser of that. And infused with the number 7 being used all over the place as this symbolic language. Because the more I got into it, I realized the first sentence in Hebrew, I know this is going to be a deep thought. You might not have ever heard this. I never heard this. The first sentence has 7 Hebrew words. So if you go read the first sentence of the Bible, in the beginning, God created, you're like, oh, there's way more than 7. What are we talking about? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But in Hebrew, it's 7. And the middle one, which is usually the focus, because there's 3 words on both sides, is kind of our word for thee. But in the Hebrew language, it is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet and the last. And you're like, well, what's your point? I don't really have one. All I know is that when they wrote this, it's way deeper.
At least he was honest enough to say he didn't have a point.
I'm saying it's way deep. It's a way deeper sentence than you realize. Because you're saying in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's like an ongoing thing that has a completion and a beginning and a middle without it really coming across that way in
Well, let's
English.
face it, it is the greatest statement ever made, because it is the question of existence. I mean,
But I'm just saying it led me to notice all these
which
literary patterns, and let me just give you a couple more, and then you comment on it, Zach. What I didn't realize is like post sin. Now this is not the number 7, but I just want to bring this to your attention, and I said I wasn't going to go down this road.
we're going.
I'm introducing.
It sounds like we're going, Maddie.
Because I want to make one point that I haven't made about the creation and the new creation being actually better, because that's what God does, to Zach's point. But there's curses is mentioned 5 times post-sin. You know, remember when he said, cursed be you? You know, he told the evil one, he told Adam and Eve. But then there's a couple more, like in chapter 5, Cain, who killed Abel. Remember, there was a curse, and then the land of Canaan. Well, when he comes to Abraham in chapter 12 and is going to give him this promise, well, he lists 5 blessings that will come from this 7-line paragraph that has 7 lines in it. It's almost like, okay, I created life in 7 days, then we turn from it. And then, well, let's start this project again. Then you have Noah with the rest, you know, and he's trusting God. Then you have Abraham. You're going to see this pattern repeat itself all the way, because I'm in Leviticus now, so I hadn't even got to the New Testament. But you're going to see it all the way to when Jesus comes, and each time it's pointing towards something that's better, which then you get to the book of Hebrews. What's the whole theme?
Yeah.
Jesus is just better.
He's better.
And so he goes back to all this history, all this symbolic language, all of what he did, and he's like, now look what's offered. And we're just seeing the goodness of that here in the book of John and in Luke. I mean, just look at his body. His human body that came out of the tomb, it's just better.
Yeah.
He can disguise himself.
He can disappear.
He can levitate.
The problem sometimes though you hear that and you think that the old was bad and that the new is good. I like to think of it more as a progression of an unfolding of this story of covenant grace that starts at the beginning and the thread runs all the way through. So it's not like we get to the New Testament and God's like, oh man, I really messed up on the Old Testament. That whole law thing didn't work. So what am I going to do? And he's wringing his hands. You know what? I'm going to send Jesus now and he'll fix everything that was messed up in the past. I think that's the wrong way of viewing it. In fact, I would argue that you can't truly find coherence in the scripture as a whole in any part of it unless you're seeing Christ in it. Christ is the fulfillment of all of it. So it's more of a fulfillment. So when we get to the new heaven and the new earth, it's more than just better than the past. It's the fulfillment of everything. So because Christ is the centerpiece. So Christ is the fulfillment. So then that affects the way we read the scripture. And then all of a sudden, if you start to employ this hermeneutic in your reading of the Bible, what will happen is it will begin to open up and unlock, and these obscure verses that you may have discarded in the past, I'll give you an example. All those instructions that I've skipped over for years about the construction of the tabernacle and the temple. When I do my Bible readings, I just read through that because that stuff doesn't really matter. Now, all of a sudden, now that I'm reading the scripture through the lens of Christ, even the most mundane details begin to awaken and to paint this incredible picture that literally will bring you to tears and seeing the beauty of the gospel in it. So you can read Christ in all of it.
Well, there's no argument with that. You don't have to make an argument. We're in total agreement. It's a process is what I was saying. But think about Matthew 11:28, where he said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Mm-hmm. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. So my whole point was that when God created the earth in 6 days, and you go through every day, it was good. He got to humans, it was very good. But then when it says he rested, well, it doesn't have the line, then there was day, and then there was night. So it was the purpose of the first creation, this is my conclusion of this whole little teaser on that, was for humans to reign and rest with God, and time stood still. And so when you're eventually going to get to the Sabbath, which the Sabbath was not commanded till way later in Exodus, it was a sign of that act. It was a symbolic time stand still, reflect God is the one providing. Now, when sin happened, that messed up. That was messed up. So when you think about what Jesus is offering in the new rest, it's the same thing. That's why he said it's finished, on the cross. He comes back from the dead. We get the Holy Spirit, and we're now reigning and resting in Jesus as part of the new creation.
And working.
Yeah, and working, but it's a different kind of work. Exactly. We'll get to that. That's the most confusing part of it, which is why I think people have trouble going from Genesis to Revelation with that idea.
Yeah.
But that's why I wanted to say in Genesis 2, look it up in the Hebrew lexicon. When he said he put him in the garden, it's the synonym for he rested him in the garden to work it.
Yeah.
And I heard a really good illustration of this. It's kind of silly, but it's a really good illustration because you say, well, what kind of work was it if it was? Now just think, no sin has happened yet. And the illustration I heard, which I think's a good one, he said it's kind of like when kids, Tim Mackey made this, or I think his sidekick did. He said, so what you're saying, because they were discussing that verse.
Yeah.
And he said, it's kind of like when your kids go trick-or-treating and they get all these gifts from people. And then they go home and they organize that candy for days. Tim Mackey busted out laughing because he was like, that's it. You know, you didn't do anything to get that, but you're organizing it. And I think being in the garden that God provided, whatever that work at it was different than when the thorns and the briars came.
And the fight for survival.
The fight for survival. And I thought, that's a pretty good illustration.
All of a sudden, the kids disobey.
Well,
they're killing each other out of jealousy.
I mean, it may be a poor illustration, but it proves the point that there's, and it's like we work. Just think, like going back to the Ephesians 2:10. Are we really working for anything? I mean, we're working for the Lord, for the kingdom, but it's not. It's just being a house for the Holy Spirit working through you,
right? That
you're just trying to not get in the way.
To Zach's word, it's a sanctified life is what it looks like.
It took me a lot of time to manage my finances before I switched over to Rocket Money. When I went to Rocket Money, I put in all my information, and I found out that there was one particular subscription that I was paying for 3 times for the same subscription. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, helps you monitor your spending, and it helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings.
So Rocket Money is a big help for me, Jase, because all my grandkids tend to subscribe to things. You know, mine are old enough where they subscribe to things that I don't know about, but they're on my accounts. So, and I don't know much about it. So thank you, Rocket Money, for alerting me to everything my grandkids are doing and signing up things on my behalf.
I can see all my subscriptions in one place, including the ones that I forgot about, which happen to be quite a few of them. And if I see something that I don't want, Rocket Money can help me cancel it. Rocket Money's dashboard gives me a clear view of my expenses across all my accounts. I can create a personalized budget to help keep my spending on track, get alerts if my bills increase in price or if there's any unusual spending activity. Plus, their goals features can help you determine the best time each month to put a little extra money aside. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They deal with the customer service teams, so you don't have to. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/unashamed. That's rocketmoney.com/unashamed. rocketmoney.com/unashamed. Well, it's the word. The word is to rest would be more when you rest him in the garden. He did work in the garden, so he's clearly not. It's not the opposite of work. The rest is to abide, to be present. So he's putting him in this place to live is what it is. And so the curse, you have to remember, the curse was never work. The curse was that by your work now, by the sweat of your brow, you'll work the land, but it'll produce thorns and thistles for you. But so the curse was that it will produce thorns and thistles. That's the curse. That's why, what did Christ wear on his crown as a crown when he was crucified? He wore the curse. He wore the thorns and the thistles on his head because he was becoming victorious over that. So when you think about the call of humanity, and you can look, this is another 3-liner motif that goes all throughout Scripture, that we're called to be fruitful, multiply, cultivate the earth, subdue it, and then have dominion over it. So think about that what man was initially instructed when he was rest in the garden. What was he rested in there to do? Well, he was put in there to cultivate, to subdue, and to have dominion, be fruitful, multiply. But why subdue? I mean, that's an interesting thought. Why?
Well, that's why I said reign over the beasts of the earth, the animals, and I would say to reflect God's image.
But I like that idea about relationship, because another illustration is like this last week, since we've been home, every day I'm cooking something in the kitchen. Now, I'm cooking things that I'm not eating myself. I'm cooking for everybody else. But I'm at rest in my home. I got my Christmas music playing in the background.
You're settled.
I'm settled. Yeah. I'm at rest. It's the place I want to be. It's during the holidays, my favorite time of year. I'm cooking like crazy. You say, man, you're like a workhouse. But I'm doing it all because I love it, because other people enjoy the fruit of it. And so it's kind of that same.
Because the house has been built. And
yeah, exactly.
I think it's a good word nesting, settling in the presence of God, Him using you.
Right.
It's
to reflect
enjoyment.
Him.
It's an enjoyment of the world that He created when it's rightly ordered.
I agree 100%.
That's what you're sitting in when we say rest. It does actually, though, work in participation with cultivating work. That when you think about that word subdue, what is there to be subdued? I mean, the picture there is that you have the garden, but then outside of the garden, which is the rest of the globe, it wasn't subdued yet. And so we can only imagine what was beyond the perimeters of the garden. But the instruction was essentially, I want you to take this garden here, and I want you to make the entire globe the garden. And if the garden is the temple, if the garden is the place where God dwells with his human creatures, then what he's saying is, I want you to make the entire cosmos my home, so that I can dwell with my people. And that was the initial call of humanity.
Well, and you'll see it all throughout, Jase. You'll get there after Leviticus, because when you get to the promised land, you remember what God told Moses to tell the people? He said, you're going to pick fruit from trees you didn't plant.
Well, right.
You're going to.
All these
it's
verses
just so
are
much,
coming. And even the temple itself and the Sabbath, time stands still, and the temple was about space, God's space and human space coming together. Because we get so hung up on what we do in space, and we just are in denial about time.
Yeah.
We fight it. We use all these little phrases. We've talked about that before. I'm going to save some time, and I think that's what's behind the idea of the reminder of the Sabbath, which we'll get to. But I think we need to introduce John 21, or we're never going to get there.
Let me steer us back but it does tie in, Jase, because many times this text is called the restoration of Peter. And we know it's more than that, to your point.
Yeah.
It's not only him now getting back in the relationship with Christ, but then also him laying out exactly where he's going to go. And so,
and also, don't discount the fact that he said this is the first day of the week. He said it twice.
Yeah.
You had Pilate saying, "Here's the man." Well, that's on the sixth day.
Right.
You have Jesus on the day that would have been the Sabbath, being in the grave,
right,
and then he comes back on the first day of the week.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it's fine to connect this as a new creation, because he's introducing a new mode of being available for humans.
In fact, ironically, you remember in between the two appearances that we talked about last time, it was first day of the week, he appears to the disciples, and then he waited a whole week till the first day of the week again to appear to Thomas.
7 days later.
7 days later.
Exactly.
For the last
Why do we have the 7 signs leading up to this? We're going to go through that at some point.
All right, so I want to read this and set us up for the next podcast so we can try to get done. It says, so we think, N.T. Wright said this as well, that this chapter, he probably ended the book in 20, and this chapter was probably added later, either by John or one of the people that work with John, because it's almost like he's telling one more story. But it's almost like we wrapped the book in chapter 20. So most scholars believe this was added, and not meaning added like way after time, but by John.
Maybe it was to reinstate Peter, because nowhere else
right.
in the Gospels does it have the reinstatement.
And obviously this is the leader of the first century church, so it's important to know how that happened.
And it would give his 2 letters a little more credibility if we know he came back from the denial, because we left off at the denial.
Exactly. So here's what happened. It says afterward. So we know this is some point in 40. When it says after, it's some point in 40 days, because Jesus was only here 40 days. We know that from
Acts 1.
And Acts 1. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. So it's back to the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, so here's Peter, Thomas, there's Thomas again, Nathanael, which is a callback to chapter 1, Jase, from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, so that's James and John, the sons of thunder, and 2 other disciples were together. And I don't know why those guys didn't get named. Maybe they weren't part of the original 12. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went out, they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. And by the way, this is a callback. You need to go back and read Luke 5, because this is exactly how Peter got in the first time.
And I think we've gone through that before, but it's awesome.
Very powerful. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. So now they fished all night. They hadn't caught anything. And so now all of a sudden, Jesus is on the shore. But the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. So here we go again. Some sort of either he's too far away or he's done something again to his appearance, which is what I think. So they don't know who he is. He calls out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? And I'm going to talk about the next podcast about that word friends, which is interesting. No, they answered. So he said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. So again, this is right back to Luke 5.
It is. And the response was totally different in Luke 5 when the miracle happened.
Right.
Remember, Peter fell down and said, have mercy on me, I'm a sinner.
Right.
But this response we're fixed to see.
So when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. So once again, we have this miraculous catch that God has provided, Jesus has provided. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, which we assume is John, said to Peter, it is the Lord. So he immediately recognized the callback.
Which is a statement because he was dead a few days ago.
Exactly. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say it, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped in the water. So he didn't even, it was just another, it's another callback. Remember when he tried to walk on the water and he was sinking? It's like he's going to walk on water again, to get to Jesus.
Which is, look, I've jumped in the water a many a time, but never for something this exciting.
That's right.
But every other time was exciting.
The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. So it even tells how far they were. And by the way, 100 yards you can see. So that's why I think Jesus was disguising. 100 yards you could tell if it was him or not. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals. Uh-oh, there's another callback. Remember the last time Peter was around some burning?
When he denied, there was a fire. He was warming himself, said, I don't know the man.
So, and there was fish on it and some bread. So Jesus has made breakfast, fish and bread on coals. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you've just caught. Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. And Jase, you love this line because he actually mentions the number of fish. Only a commercial fisherman would put this in here. It was full of large fish, 153. Only a fisherman will tell you exactly how many he caught.
Who would make this up? You want some scientific evidence? There it is.
Only a fisherman would do that. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Ooh, there's a callback because the net was tearing back in Luke 5. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him. So they still don't he still doesn't look like himself because they said they didn't dare ask him, who are you? That's interesting. They knew it was the Lord. So even though it didn't look like him, they knew it was him.
Who would do this?
Jesus came, took the bread, gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. There's a callback to John 13, when they're feeding and the first Passover and all this stuff. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead.
It also fulfills the first line he told them when he said, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men.
Yeah.
And he's going to tell Peter in this next conversation, follow me.
Right.
I'll make you fishers of men.
So there are many, many callbacks. I just highlighted a few as we went through, but there's the feeding of the 5,000, with the fish and the bread. And so there's that callback that he does. There's so many, it's almost like, and I think that's why John includes it afterwards, because it's like you're going back over the span of the whole gospel and you're seeing it all being retold in this one appearance that he has with them, once again, fishing. It's almost like you said, it's Restoration Plus because it's about to get way better. Because the Great Commission is going to come after this at some point, right before he leaves.
I mean, for all humans out there, the possibility to have breakfast with someone who was dead should light your fire.
Should it make you jump out of the boat and try to walk on water?
I have thought to myself thousands of times that when we get our resurrected bodies, that statement being said.
Right.
All right, let's have breakfast. I mean, this is the pinnacle to me. I think if you're a human and are not living in denial when it comes to time and your own impending death, which it is impending.
Right.
This is the hope he's offering.
And I love it that this is resurrected, glorified Son of God, Son of Man, doing something so human to just cook breakfast for him to reconnect. I mean, to me, it's like it's the ultimate idea of a family gathering.
Well, one of the themes of the Bible is heaven and earth coming back together, which started in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and you see that through a human, the Son of God, Jesus, offering hope to humanity.
So we got a lot to unpack, and we'll get to it next time on Unashamed.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube. And be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.